platitudes or patronizing. The council has been overwhelmed at the quality and the number of great people that could fill city council district seat number 1. We had a really enjoyable process yesterday, interviewing candidates, trying to learn more about their backgrounds and how they would approach this job. And it's been if there's a way to make lemonade out of lemons, the process of getting to know amazing people is part of the lemonade. How we're going to start is I'm gonna read off a name and give the council an opportunity. They don't need to say anything, but to give the council an opportunity to add any impressions that they had from these candidates yesterday. I'll begin with Cami Hostetler. And I was impressed with Cami for a couple of different reasons. I think generationally she would bring a different voice than maybe what the council has currently. Some of the things that I starred from her interview yesterday were priorities of being a voice for the people, getting to know her community, being a leader, grit and determination, and empowering others. And I was extremely impressed with Cami. Any other comments from the council as far as Cami?
Yeah, I don't know. Is Cami in the room right now? Or maybe she's on line hybrid. I believe when I met her at the CHBA meeting, if I'm not mistaken, she manages a childcare center, and actually a couple, I think one in Cottonwood Heights and one at Holiday. And I was very impressed when I met her, how innovative she and people that work in that field have to be to overcome the relative challenge of being able to keep a business afloat in the childcare field. It's very challenging, and so I immediately had admiration for her at that time, and she continued to show, as you said, Mayor, the grit and determination and innovative thinking, and I really appreciate that. I also am interested in the council representing our voting population. And we know that likely with me being the elder of the group at 66 years old, we probably, our median age here is pressing up against 60. And I think it would be a real advantageous thing for the city of Cottonwood Heights to have someone of a different generation on this council.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. And I will be an advocate for those under 60 on the council. So.
Well, I have to just quickly say that Doug Peterson and I had a fun running joke. He was born less than 2 months after me, and he always said, "Oh, there's that elderly Ellen Burrell."
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. Anybody else?
I'll just add a couple comments too about what I heard from Cami yesterday. I really enjoyed the way that she focused on being a direct communicator. That's something that's really critical for us here in this position on the council, and her understanding of that necessity to develop trust and a knowledge of the needs of our community members. That was something that really resonated with me yesterday. And overall, I fall in line with the other comments that were made about her, and appreciate her coming in and being willing to serve as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Newell.
I like that she portrayed herself as a farm girl, open space. That obviously does communicates and the focus on local business.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. The next candidate to discuss is Ira Boyer. And I want to compliment Ira. He's been coming to our meetings for a long period of time. It's since I've been mayor, it's been good to see him, which means that he's been consistently engaged with our community and staying abreast of issues, which is really, really important. I don't want you to take offense at this, Ira, but he reminds me of my dad. in age wise, that doesn't matter, but, and there isn't a person that I look up to more in the world than my dad. And you encompass a lot of the qualities of my dad. So, appreciate Ira being on this candidate.
Well, I too admire engineers and scientists. My father was an aeronautical engineer and my brother's a pharmacist, and my sister got her bachelor's of science in dietetics and food administration. So I was the well, I hate to call myself a black sheep, but I didn't quite follow exactly in that pattern. But I'd like to think that I analyzed things in the scientific method that was displayed all around me in my formative years. And I think that that this applicant really displayed that. And Ira, thank you. Excellent, great thinking and processing.
Everything I was going to say has been said. I agree. Those that come and listen, that's definitely an advantage with a short 6.5 months until the seat is filled by election. Knowing what's been going on is a skill. Otherwise, it's a lot of catch up. That's H red sauce.
Okay. The next candidate would be Susan Reiser. What I wrote down for Susan and what I highlight is experience. Susan has done a lot of great things, been involved in the beginnings of our planning commission and incorporation of the city. We exist for people like Susan who put energy into making our community what it is. So I just, like I said, if there was a quality that I could express to everybody, it would be the amount of experience that Susan would bring to the job.
I would echo that. Sue is, I am having a hard time with Susan because it's always been Sue Reiser this, Sue Reiser that. But that experience, her point again, and having been involved, having known some of the history, some of that institutional knowledge is certainly an asset.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken.
I would agree. I thought that her understanding of the limitations of the city municipalities when addressing certain issues was really critical and insightful. And again, I'll mirror what everyone else has said about her knowledge overall. I thought it was very strong, and I think she makes a great candidate as well.
Thank you. The next person that we had was Catherine Burns, who I highlighted a couple of things that she said yesterday, but I loved her response to Councilmember Burrell's question. She is somebody who is taking air quality and environmental issues serious. She's, mentioned solar panels on her home that she's done, and she's planted over 100 trees on her property, which is amazing. And, she rides her bike. She, recycles. She does all of the things that we all should be doing to enhance air quality. And that really stood out for me from Catherine, that she would be a great advocate on the council for things that are important to our entire community. So.
One of the striking things, I really tried to think of a single candidate who didn't have a background in business. It's very impressive to me, the great backgrounds that people would bring to the council. And I see Catherine Burns as one of those people. Her incredible background in the in HR, in other things that she's done, worked in the hospitality industry, problem solver, a doer. I didn't get to put in my 2 cents on Sue Reiser, but she also falls in that category of being a doer, has demonstrated getting the job done. And that's real important to me. I love conversation. I love to read and hear what everybody has to say. And at the end of the day, it's when you're really a person is citing what they have already demonstrated that resonates really big with me. And I feel that Catherine Burns and many of the applicants for this position have demonstrated and shared.
after the interview, she came up and, I knew that she put in her application that she'd been involved in the restaurant business for a lot of her career, and somewhere along the lines, she said, Fred said hi, and anybody who knows Fred Botwell, knows that he's a friend to the city and police department, at Marcus Street, and that was just nice. Anybody that's a friend of Fred should be a friend of mine at least. But I was also very impressed with, her putting some of these things like the trees and how she gets about things like that into practice in her own life. That was a notable point for her.
Great. The next candidate that we had the opportunity to meet yesterday was Mark Lentz. And I was impressed with Mark for a couple of different reasons. When you are interviewing, you know, it's easy to hear part of the question and think about what you're going to say. Mark was an amazing listener because he answered almost every aspect of every question. I pay quite a bit of attention to that, and I don't begrudge anybody with different styles, but Mark was very attentive, and which means to me that he's going to listen to people, and was impressed with his answers. They were thoughtful and well spoken. So.
I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit, Mayor. One of the things that really impressed me there was the complete answers that we received, and also understanding that as a fairly new resident, bringing some insights that were really critical, things that we are working on now. You know, understanding the balance between the growth and character. I remember that quote quite clearly yesterday. I thought that was really insightful. And then making sure that he was going to be working towards access as a primary factor for our residents. That really resonated with me because that's a critical thing, knowing that everyone has an opportunity to serve here, even if you're not a member of the council or the mayor or the staff or anything. This is about our residents. This is about the people that live. I really appreciated that.
I certainly don't mean any of my comments to sound flippant in any way, but he certainly has showed some very good intelligence. If he is a rock climber, a skier, a biker, that he chose a good place to live. Those things right here, right now, it's obvious, but yes, we have certainly one of the best places anywhere around, have access to those types of things with the canyons being so close. And I think that's a great thing to bring to the council to help improve things in the city.
Well, and I would like to add that one of the things that makes any group great is the diverse perspectives. And while many of us either grew up here in Cottonwood Heights, or like I've lived in Salt Lake County 40 years, 34 of them have been here in Cottonwood Heights. And I like that I've lived in 3 different neighborhoods, and that's been helpful to me. But I also really value the perspectives of people who have not lived here so long and can help us to understand what's going on in other places. And they're rather fresh. You know, there's an old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. And I think that Mark brings a perspective of really seeing the trees and the forest. And I think he also would be a good fit. We know that Doug Peterson represented the council on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. And I think that, you know, Mark Lentz could fill that responsibility very well, as well as, again, bring some diverse perspectives to our council.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. The next candidate we're going to talk about is Jesse Curtis. Besides, I guess, good genes.
To be careful, he brought his dad.
We know a little bit where he comes from, but you know, I love the educator background from Jesse. You know, he's teaching children, and when you teach children, to me, you're a blessed person in our community. There isn't a more important role to me than, you know, from having 6 kids, for those that spent time teaching. And so, you know, I loved every one of Jesse's responses. You know, one of the things from my question to Jesse that stood out was that he was going to listen to residents. He's going to examine facts and listen to residents. And Jesse, along with everyone else we've talked about, would be a great member of the council.
I don't know that I should admit to this, but Jesse, I went through and kind of had things written down at each point on everybody, and Jesse scored higher than I honestly expected that he would. That's good. It's good. It was a good chance to get to know. I'd met him a couple of years ago when he was running for Senate. I like the educational part as well. No, I forgot the point that I started to make, and now it's dribbled out. But if I come up with it, I'll speak up again. I apologize. It was very nice though.
Yeah, the item for me that stood out was for an educator to say that they would get educated on the issues. I thought that that was something that was really critical, and it caught my attention because that shows an area of focus on not letting things just kind of float by and just go by hearsay and so forth, but to really dig in deep to find out what are the pros and cons, what are the possible disparate outcomes, those types of things when you're looking at being educated on issues. And I thought that was really critical. That's my big thing.
I found out I actually had it highlighted. I just wasn't looking in the right place. Yes, I will confess to a little bit of Facebook stalking, but I remember also when you were running that I got a knock on a door from one of the fellows that lives up the street from me, who was a former Boy Scout that I'd been out camping with a number of times, and he says, "I don't ever do this, but my friend is running for Senate. He'd like your consideration." I was the delegate at the time, but amongst his Facebook friends were a number of the at the time they were boys that we'd gone out camping and done things with. But the Osbornes and Chris and some of those others are just some people I have associations with. And again, when you've got good friends and good associations, that reflects well upon you.
And I would like to add that when this process started, I received a phone call from Jesse, and I really have high regard for people who are capable and demonstrate that they are willing to outreach, be vulnerable, as the mayor had used yesterday. And I feel that Jesse and I had a great exchange on the phone that day, going on 3 weeks ago. And I think he would bring a great perspective to the council, you know, as a young man, a young father, you know, well, believe me, youth is a relative term. So, you know, it's really important that we have voices like yours, Jesse, in our government. And so I appreciate all those things that have already been said. And additionally, your willingness to be in outreach and demonstrating that.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. The next candidate that we had an opportunity to spend time with yesterday was Heather Anderson. So full disclosure, I have a previous personal relationship with Heather, and I don't doubt for a second the love that Doug Peterson had for Heather, and they had consistent communication, and Heather would be an outstanding member of our city council. Her love for our city, I think, shows in every conversation you have for her. You know, the fact that she's you know, her kids are moving out and she's ready to find something to work on, and I can't imagine a better advocate for our city, somebody willing to put in the time than Heather Anderson. So
No, I agree with that. I've had a number of conversations with Heather over the last few years. She, along with a couple of others, was very instrumental in coming up and organizing a public support for our police department when there was some trials and other things going on through the city. She's been wonderful to talk to. I know that her heart is in absolutely the right place, and she'd be absolutely committed. She was definitely at the top of my list as far as candidates go, from that experience. And just I don't know that I know exactly how she feels on all the issues we've going on, but I know that she would be willing to get in, study, and make good decisions. And I agree with you. Her and Doug, since April 20th, there's been a couple times that she called, says, well, what's going on here? I can't call Doug. So now it's you or the mayor. Maybe you were not available at the time. I don't know.
Well, and I will say too of Heather Anderson that she reached out to me directly. We've chatted. She, I think, has a lot of what it would take to be a great council member, and I really appreciate her. I don't know her well, but I think she's offered the city a lot, and clearly people in District 1 hold her in high regard. That's wonderful.
okay. So the next candidate that we want to talk just a little bit about is Michael Smith. I wrote down quite a few notes from Michael, but one of the things that I don't doubt at all that he would bring is life experience. He is currently serving on our planning commission, and we 100% supported that appointment and knew that he would dig in and do a great job. I love his background of being a doctor, a psychiatrist. He talked a couple of things that were super interesting to me, especially working out at the county jail. I had a similar experience in my career where I worked at a youth detention center, and it changed me, literally changed who I was and how I viewed people in the world. And I loved Michael sharing that experience with us. But don't doubt as well with the others that he would make an outstanding member of our city council.
Can I say ditto? I appreciate that. I thought Michael did a great job of expressing his positions and how he would navigate being a part of the council, and I thought that was really critical. Catch up on some of those points that he made. Appreciated that as well.
I was supportive of his appointment to the planning commission. Definitely make a good member of the council. He was also one of my favorite from amongst the narrowing it down to one has been very challenging.
Okay, the next candidate that we had the opportunity to meet and talk with was Matt Holton. And once again, Matt and I did have had a previous personal relationship. I was really happy that Matt talked about his Korean heritage. To me, that matters. And he talked about inclusion. And I think you have to have sometimes a different perspective to understand the importance of including people, especially in a city where we're trying to involve everyone and to have everybody have a voice. And his background, you know, to me is amazing. The amount of different things he's done, even though he's a young guy. You know, he brings a different generational experience, and he's done a lot in the 15 years that he talked about, the things that he's done, and Matt would make an amazing member of our city council.
I'll have to admit that I've known Matt for a long time as well. I think his experience in the area of civics is phenomenal. What I know about the work that he's done. And he was willing to share that. And like the mayor just stated, his understanding of the generational shifts and the way that mindsets are in these current times, give us an idea of the open-mindedness that an individual has and the way that they would be, the way that they would operate in this position if they were chosen to be on the council. And I've always appreciated that about him. I appreciated sharing with that yesterday.
Amongst the comments that he had in his written comments, he had as Councilman Rule mentioned, he specifically called out all life stage housing, and that's something we've discussed quite a bit as we have been to various conferences in-house and making sure that Cottonwood Heights is a place that younger families can come. So I guess we just don't all die off, whatever that is, but we can have that variety in our neighborhoods. The thing that also resonated with what he said yesterday was that even though, because he had pointed out a different lens, being a little bit different, but what really made his community was being included. And that I think that's really, really important. It doesn't matter how different we are. It doesn't matter a lot of those things. If we feel like we have neighbors, if we feel we have friends, if we feel included, that's where we feel at home. And that's what we need to try to do as a city, as much as we can. Make sure that everyone feels included, that we have a place to go, that they're safe, and those things are top of mind.
Okay. The next candidate that we had an opportunity to meet with and ask questions to yesterday was James Farley. So I was unbelievably impressed with James, not only from his background, his experience. You know, I as I thought about James, I thought, boy, what a great mayor he would make. Or anyway, I just saw in him potential to do a lot of different things within our city. The fact that he has young kids and he's a young father, I think is a great attribute. You know, I loved how he expressed himself. Thought he answered the questions that we asked completely, and couldn't be more impressed with James.
Just if for anyone interested, filing for mayor is not for a couple of years yet. I like that he took Dan Jones' advice to heart to get involved. Dan was an icon in the community for decades, and he always knew through his employment the heartbeat of what was going on around him. He mentioned to local officials many, many times that that's the level of government that people most trust, it's the level of government people most like, and it's really where, I mean, literally where the rubber meets the road. And to have him mention that type of mentor was very nice. I respected Dan, and that went in his family too. His wife served in the Senate also. Wonderful to know.
Thank you, Mayor Bracken. The next candidate that we have to talk about is Jennifer Cottom. So one of the things that I wrote about Jennifer is, likability. My goodness, I can't see anybody not liking Jennifer. And that's actually an important attribute to feel that you're approachable and that people can come and talk to you about issues. And her background is diverse and I mean, anybody that studies chemistry more than just has to take that has, to me has a check mark by their name, because they're obviously smarter than I am. But I loved her focus on environmental issues, and I know that she would be, like we mentioned with another candidate, a great advocate for environmental and active transportation and the things that she shows by actually doing instead of just talking about things. But Jennifer would make an outstanding member.
I'd like to add that one of the things that Jennifer stated was relational engagement. And I thought that really resonated when we talk about the way, as a council member, you have to engage your entire community. You have to engage the rest of the members on the council. And that to me, and I put it in quotes, was really moving, because a lot of times we forget that this is about relationships. This is about our community. This is about where we live. And I so appreciated that statement that was made yesterday.
Well, continuing on that, in that vein, again, Jennifer Cottom has demonstrated her service to the community and her abilities here. Many people know her through the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center, where I initially met her about 12 years ago. And I've taken classes from her. Little did I know that she had a master's degree in hazardous waste management and was such an accomplished person. She has been a consultant in the United States as well as in Europe. The state of Utah hired her when they needed to make a plan about hazardous waste. She not only made the plan, she implemented it and did the training. Her ability to reach people of every walk of life, I have seen that firsthand. And so as the mayor and Councilman Bracken and Councilman Newell have expressed with other candidates that they have known them personally, I have just been in awe of her diverse background, that she, while she was raising her children in Cottonwood Heights, she has 2 children, and she's now an empty nester. Now, no moss is growing under her feet as far as I know, but she does have more time and elbow space. She has a very supportive spouse. One of the things I've learned about being on the council is that it does take from, I can't speak for my colleagues here, but having a supportive partner, I know for me, has made all the difference in the world. And so I see when she talks about things like infrastructure, these aren't just words. She's lived and breathed things related to infrastructure. She has an analytical mind. She is welcoming, as everyone has pointed out. She would also bring greater balance to the city council. I think it's pretty evident that there, as a woman, I represent 20% of the city council, whereas our voting population is 52% of the voters in Cottonwood Heights are female. I think having another woman on the city council would be very positive in many ways. One of the other elements that Jennifer has already demonstrated is in the realm of bringing walkability to our city. In the 2022 and 2023 surveys, it has been in the number 1 or 2 slot that residents say they want walkability. Well, walkability is active transportation. They're one and the same, and we need safe mobility for all users and people who have already demonstrated they have an understanding of what active transportation is. And so I think she would be an ideal liaison to the PTOS committee. I also want to bring up that she has also demonstrated being a doer. She was a volunteer with PTSA and in a number of other capacities with organizations related to helping people who are trying to rehabilitate themselves from drug and alcohol problems. She is also, she was on scholarship this last year. There's an organization called Women in Leadership. This organization started about 8 years ago because Zions Bank and Intermountain Healthcare both stepped forward to be sponsors of a program that would bring more women not only into the political scene, but into the executive business level. And Jennifer was invited on scholarship last summer to participate in that 6-month program, which she completed in February. She also has been observing the city council meetings regularly for many months. So on several levels, she has ticked nearly every box that I am looking for in a city council member to take this vacant seat.
Thank you. The next,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, Councilmember Bracken.
Jennifer was another one who had a number of common Facebook friends. Not surprisingly, a lot of them were through the through the recreation center. I liked the when she communicated the kind of the rural nature of where you grew up and how that applies to infrastructure, because there's a lot of things that we just take for advantage, take for granted. That's important to understand when we start talking in budgets and building ways for people to get around.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. So the next candidate that we're going to talk about is Mackenzie Lips. So, you know, one of the things that I wrote down that would be an amazing attribute for Mackenzie to add to this council is a CPA. So he has a financial background that understands numbers. You know, I say this often to people. We are getting ready to pass our 23-24 budget here in the next month for the following fiscal year that we follow, and the budget starts about within a month or two. We start talking about the following year, and we have budget amendments throughout the year, and so understanding numbers to me means a big deal. So the allocation of funds is something that the council is I consider a sacred responsibility to where we decide to fund and what projects, and understanding how numbers relate to the overall budget is an important aspect. And so I think it'd be you know, that's a big deal that Mackenzie has that background. One of the other things that I starred that he talked about was mitigating risk. To me, as a banker, mitigating risk is a big deal, and the fact that you understand what that means and why it's important for our city and every decision that we make is important as well. So I appreciated your understanding of that. And then last, I love people that are optimistic. So saying that you're optimistic, I trust you, but I love people that are optimistic. So thank you.
I too found Mackenzie's comments quite salient, and for a numbers guy, he also really seemed to have a balance within his own lifestyle and his viewpoint and kind of his theoretical way of looking at things. So I appreciated those elements as well.
I thought Mackenzie touched on a couple of things. The respect and understanding of differing perspectives was really, my mic's going in and out, was just mitigation. You know, that's a lot of what we do and the conversations that we have before creating any policies here in the city is understanding how to mitigate possible negative outcomes. And I think having an awareness of that is a real excellent trait, and I appreciate it. So.
Okay. The last candidate that we have to talk about before we move on to the next step is Boyd Tuttle. I really enjoyed listening to Boyd. I thought what an amazing background. He's lived in Japan and New York. I kind of liked how he tied it in. He began his life here and lived his first 20 years here, and then loved it so much he came back. The other thing that he needs a medal for is having 9 children. I have 6, and I get that, not a lot, but 9 children is an amazing fact. I wrote down in my notes when he was talking that Boyd has a sincere love for Cottonwood Heights. I sensed that from him. I loved that he talked about the town square, things that he talked about how to bring people together, and tied it in with the brand loyalty. I thought it was a fascinating, and I think Boyd would be absolutely an amazing member of our council.
Boyd was, my question had to deal with interactions with staff, and I'm sorry that I almost didn't let him, his paper got stuck somewhere else and I almost didn't let him speak, but I'm glad that he did before I was able to get on there. One of the things that I was looking for in that question was an understanding of what the role of an elected official is. For some people, there's a perception that it is to direct staff to get in there, dig in the details, micromanage them, make sure everything's going just the way that they want. And that's not true. The job of a legislator or a city council is to set policy. And getting data often requires staff help. Getting being able to get direction to staff requires different things. Those are usually funneled through our form of government, the city manager. In some cities, it would be the mayor. But that understanding was he was the one who most aced that question in my opinion. I liked that there was that understanding. I did spend some time in Japan too, although I only mostly went through Yokohama, didn't actually stop there very often, except if I got on the wrong train. But I did like his experience. It was Yokohama and then Rochester. My wife's family was in the Rochester area for a little while, so there was a couple of just similar points there. I really liked what he had to say and his experience as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Bracken. Okay, well, as we move on to the voting aspect, I'm going to turn some time over to our city manager, Tim Tingy, in a second to kind of talk about the process that we'll be following in voting. But let me just end one more time with a thank you to these amazing candidates. It's under state statute that when you lose a candidate, an elected official, that the council is in charge of appointing somebody. I don't love that, but it's what we're required to do. Fortunately, the voters are going to get to follow up and really, the process of running a campaign for whoever wants to do it is going to start in 2 weeks, and so the voters will get the final say. But we are where we are. The decision is awful, only in that there's 13 correct answers, but we can only choose one, and so we'll do the best that we can. And I appreciate one more time your willingness to serve. It says something about you, I promise. And we won't forget that. So, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate the process is very interesting and it is defined under state code. And it's something that we don't go through very often, which is a good thing. But when you do go through that, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, evaluating, making sure that we are creating a fair process and also adhering to state code. So I appreciate the council's input on these things, our city attorney, Shane Topham, Paula Melgar, and Maria Devereaux in the recorder's office related to this. So what I'm going to do, that there's a number of things I need to talk about real quickly, and it won't take too long, but I'm going to talk about the ballot, the voting process, the selection, and which will ultimately end in a swearing in process this evening. But then a big part of this, the complexity of this, is if there is a tie-breaking process as well. So I'm going to outline those 4 elements. First of all, on the ballot, we have created a ballot. This is the official ballot that will be given to each of the council members. There will be 4 votes. They will vote for one person, and when they receive this ballot, you can see it up on the screen. The ballot is based, the order is based on the master ballot position list identified by the Lieutenant Governor's office. They went through a random selection process to identify what order individuals based on their last names need to be placed on a ballot. And so this ballot that the council will utilize shortly is based on that order, and we will pass that out to them. With the ballot, the council will submit, as I mentioned, one ballot on the first round, and they will vote. I'm just going to request to the council that when you vote and you mark the box, that you fold it once and then twice, because we have a box that you will place that in back here. And I say twice because it won't fit in the box if you fold it once. So you'll fold it twice and it will be placed in the box. Then the city recorder and assistant city recorder will tabulate the votes. And then those votes will be announced right here in the meeting as far as who the finalists are related to that. So in addition to that, if we get 3, if one candidate receives 3 votes, then they are automatically selected to fill the vacancy. That's on the first round. So if that occurs, we're done. And that will be announced, and then that person will be sworn in here later on this evening. Moving into the tie-breaking process, and we conveyed this information to candidates. And by the way, there have been changes even recently this past legislative session on the tie-breaking processes. We're going to get into that in depth, but let me explain a little bit about the process. There may be scenarios where we have to break a tie through a coin toss after the first round of voting. We have a coin, and it is, Paul, if you want to show the coin up on the screen. We've identified which, it's a city coin, which will be heads and which will be tails. We were originally thinking that we would have the 2 candidates where there is a need for a coin toss, select the heads or tails out of a basket, but we don't have all the candidates here. So the person that with the heads will be the first person in line on the master ballot list, and that was established by the lieutenant governors. And then the second, the tails will be the second person. So let me explain the scenarios on how this may occur if we don't have a majority in the first round. So there's really 3 different scenarios. The first scenario I want to explain is if you have 2 votes going to one candidate and then 1 vote going to additional candidates, 2 additional candidates. If that occurs, the candidates that tied for second place that have just 1 vote, they'll be reduced by to 1 by a coin toss conducted by the city recorder, and a second council vote will occur between the candidate that received the 2 votes in the initial vote and then the candidate that won the coin toss. So that's in a 2-1-1 scenario. And then we'll go from that point once we have the 2 candidates, and we'll do another vote with the council, which will be a second round of voting. if there's a scenario where there's a 1-1-1-1 vote, so each, there's 4 individuals that receive a vote, we'll end up going through a coin toss process as well. And we'll group the 4 individuals into 2 different groups. And that will be based on the master ballot position list, the order of that position. So the order of the first 2 will be in the first coin toss. And then the second 2 will be in the second coin toss. And once we have the winners of those 2 coin tosses, then they will go to a second round of voting with the council, and they will submit another ballot and we will vote through that process. So if the scenario occurs where we're in the first round of the process and there's a 2-2, then we'll go to the final tie-breaking process. If we go through that second voting process and have a 2-2, we'll go into the tie-breaking process as well. And the tie-breaking process, once again, I mentioned this, it changed this past legislative session. And if the second council vote or the first council vote, if there's a 2-2 tie, that neither candidate receives a majority of the vote of the city council, then the mayor may vote to break the tie. And that's based on state code. And I'm going to turn some time over to Shane Topham to explain the details of this, because this is something that we've had to research significantly over the last couple of weeks, including getting input from multiple attorneys, the Utah League of Cities, Towns, and others. And I'll turn it to Shane just for a few minutes, and then he'll turn it back to me and I'll finalize this and try to answer questions if there are any.
Yeah, as Tim mentioned, on May 3rd, we had a new bill go into effect, HB 73, that was just enacted in this last session of the legislature. And its purpose was to amend Utah Code Section 20A-1-510. This is part of the election code concerning how to fill midterm vacancies in municipal offices. And so, in other words, the process changed on us between when we started it, when I researched the process right after Council Member Peterson's death, and early May when we became aware of this new bill going into effect that changes some things. The way that the selection process occurs, the noticing, the solicitation of applications, things like that, that was all unchanged under the bill, but how the selection occurs by the council changed a bit. In other words, what we're doing tonight changed a bit. One principal change is, as Tim mentioned, we have a portion of this statute. I don't know, Paul, if you can scroll down to subsection 5 there. Right. It should just be at the top of the screen then. Subsection 5. It reads, in a municipality operating under the 6-member council form of government or the council manager form of government defined in subsection 10, 3B103 sub 7, if the voting members of the city council reach a tie vote on a matter of filling a vacancy, the mayor may vote to break the tie. This struck me as a little bit unusual as I was reading it, because of the way that mayors in 6-person council form cities vote versus council manager form cities. But as Tim mentioned, I've gone to every resource that I could find, and what I think ultimately happened is that perhaps the sponsor of this bill and the drafting attorney of this bill didn't quite understand the ramifications of lumping a council manager form city with a 6-member council form city, as this particular statute does. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't really matter, because the language in the statute is clear. There's to me, there's only one interpretation. So that is what we will need to do here tonight, is if we do end up with a final tie, as Tim has explained, why then the mayor may vote to break the tie. We are wanting to make sure that this entire process follows the law to make sure that everybody is protected, including the city and the candidates. And so that is what his advice has been, that the mayor will need to have the option to break the tie in the event of a final tie vote.
So if I may just conclude, unless there's questions, once a individual is selected, then we will have the swearing in tonight at 7 p.m. Some may ask, well, why aren't you just doing it right now, right after the vote and the selection? We wanted to give that individual time if their family wanted to attend the swearing in to be able to come at 7 o'clock. So that's when we will do that at that time, once the person's selected. So I will be passing out the ballots here in just a minute, as well as the master ballot position list, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Nope, well, let's go ahead with the process.
Just bring our own pen, or do we have like fancy ones? I spent last Thursday doing elections for our youth city council. We had 15 ballots to count 4 different times. It does tend to go quicker than an election evening when there's thousands.
Mayor, normally we would try to have music or something while we're tabulating, but we don't have that in place right now, so.
Feel like Jeff Probst.
First ballot is a vote for Matt Olson. Okay. Second, Matt Olson. Very good. Third ballot, Jennifer Carter. Ballot. Matt Olson. I think we have a winner. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Congratulations to Matt, and once again, thank you and congratulations to every candidate who came and agreed to be vulnerable, and we look forward to the residents now electing the candidate in November.
I would restrict. This decision was not lightly come to, at least on my part. There were just about any of them I could have been very, very happy with. I hope Matt's ready for a very intense at least 6 months, and we'll go from there after November.
Thank you. So item 5 on our agenda this evening is a review of our business meeting agenda tonight. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance, and then item 3 for this evening will be the swearing in for what will be Council Member Holton. Item 4 on our agenda this evening are our monthly city council reports, where we give the council an opportunity to talk about the things that they're working on. So get prepared, Matt. Item 5 is a citizen comment period that we enjoy the opportunity for our citizens to express their opinions on whatever matter. We have 2 public hearings tonight. The first one is in regards to an amendment of our fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. That is a yearly process that we amend the budget to move funds to the following calendar year that didn't get spent, that were already entitled into different projects. So that we will have a public hearing on that process, and then we will have a second public comment period on a proposed telecom tax. Both of those, actually, the first public hearing is under a staff report that we'll talk about here in just a minute. The proposed telecom tax, I'm actually going to have our administrative and finance and administrative services director, Scott Jurgis, just briefly discuss what this item is in regards to for this public comment period tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. So the telecom tax is a tax that is available for municipalities in the state of Utah to charge. That's a percentage tax on the telephone portion of a telephone bill, whether it's a landline or whether it's a cell line, not on the data portion of that bill, but on the telephone portion of that bill. This is a franchise tax that was initially authorized by the state of Utah on July 1st of 2004. The rate is 3.5% of whatever that telephone portion of the bill is. Within Salt Lake County, the only cities currently not charging the telecom tax is Cottonwood Heights and Mill Creek. All other incorporated municipalities are charging the sales or the telecom tax. And let's see, there was something else I was going to say. Oh yeah, that's right. So just kind of an example, if you had a cell phone bill that was about $40 a month, and you made the assumption that half of that is data and half of that would be telephone. So $20 being the base at 3.5%, that would be about 70 cents per month, approximately $8.40 per year per phone line. So if you had 2 phone lines, it would be twice that. It would be about $16.80, et cetera, as you go through. And again, it's charged on cell phones and business phones that are registered in the city, within the city. And the telecom providers are the ones who collect that tax, and then it remits back through the state tax commission and comes back to us if it's authorized. In order to be authorized, it has to be authorized at the beginning of a quarter. So January 1, April 1, July 1, or October 1, and we have to notify the state tax commission 1 full quarter prior to starting to collect that, so that they can put it in their notification that goes out to the telecom providers so that they can prepare for and start to collect that tax at that time. I don't know. It's anticipated we'd get about $300,000, but we don't know the exact number of telephones that are registered within the city, because that's kind of proprietary. So that's kind of what we anticipate there would be an annual collection on that. I think that's about all I have.
May I add something to that? So just especially for the public that is going to be participating in the public hearing on this, this is something that this is not the first night we've talked about it. We began conversations about it in the council retreat back in January. We've had some discussions about it in the work session. And it's something that I know even for a number of years, there's been some discussion about it as well. So this is not something that's new tonight. We've talked about it in our work sessions and kind of gone through a process evaluating it. But this tonight is very important because it's a public hearing on that. And a decision on it will not be made tonight, but the public hearing will. Eventually, we'll look at this through our budget process, which ultimately will be decided in upcoming months. But I want to make sure that we're aware that we've had some conversations as well about it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Scott. Okay, then we'll have 3 legislative action items to consider tonight. Beginning with consideration of resolution 2023-25 designating areas closed to the discharge of fireworks due to hazardous environmental conditions. We do this yearly in conjunction with our Unified Fire Authority representative. Is Riley on?
He's not, but he will be
Okay.
coming in the business session to talk about this, but I'm happy to discuss
Yeah,
it.
go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been working with the Unified Fire Authority staff, as well as our staff, community economic development, looking at the different areas. Over the years, at least especially over the last 5 years, we've expanded the area where we do not allow the discharge of fireworks. That area is even expanding a little bit more this year in what we're proposing. We'll go through the map in the business meeting prior to you considering this, but the real purpose of it is just to protect areas where we really feel that there are some vulnerabilities related to vegetation and things that could create fire issues for us. And so we want to do all that we can. We also have some limitations under state law. We can't necessarily do the whole city, even though some people would like us to. There's some distance requirement issues that has to occur as well. So we'll talk more about it prior to and show you the map a little bit in more detail at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the council?
No, I just say that could become significantly more important this year with the wet spring and the runoff. If it stays very dry into July, we could have a lot of brush and ground cover that could be very, very dry.
Thank you. Okay, the next item we'll consider tonight is consideration of resolution 2023-26, approving an agreement concerning historic resources. Tim, you want to address that real quick?
Yes, this is an agreement with Coral Brochinski, and that individual is a person that is qualified to go in and do an analysis, this reconnaissance level survey of historic areas that we have in the city. What this person will do is evaluate homes and determine if they meet the qualifications or standards for historic structures. And then we can be working with the historic committee, and they're the ones that really have initiated this. Working with them, we can go through a process, determine if we want to include those structures in a historic designation. There's some advantages to that. Some of the advantages include they can get some federal tax credits when they're doing improvements to those buildings. And they're also it's also kind of a neat opportunity for these buildings to be recognized as historic. And so there's funding that we've received through grants. This is budgeted, and the historic committee is really recommending this, and we're recommending it also as staff.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Any questions, comments?
Well, as the liaison to the historic committee, this is really to their credit. 2 of the women on the historic committee did the majority of the legwork to make this grant come through. And I think it's really to their credit that they advanced this. It's a wonderful thing for the city to have a sense of this history. It's great.
Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. The last item for this evening will be consideration of resolution 2023-27, approving an amendment to the city manager's employment agreement. And Tim, I'll have you talk about this as well.
Okay, I guess this relates to me a little bit. So in my employment contract with the city, we designated several years ago that I have taught for a number of years at the University of Utah in the Masters of Public Administration program. I've taught 2 classes for a number of years, over 10 years now. And there may be an opportunity and there's been a request from the university to see if I'd be interested in teaching a 3rd class per year. And my contract says, with the city, just says that I'm allowed only to teach 2. So I'm proposing that this be modified to allow for the 3rd class to be taught. Now, let me explain this. When we talk about teaching classes, this is a hobby of mine. It's something that I enjoy. Some people like to fish, some people like to play chess. I enjoy teaching. This is teaching in the evenings or on weekends. It's not me leaving work during the middle of the day. My priority is being city manager for sure. But this would just allow a little bit more flexibility if I were to add a 3rd class. It would mean basically 1 class per semester, 3 semesters throughout the year. And so I'm recommending approval of this change, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And if there are any major concerns, my priorities being city manager and my work as city manager, I spend a lot of time on weekends anyway with city management work, evenings. But this is just an opportunity for me to continue to have opportunities in my area that I like to do as a hobby.
For clarity's sake, you currently teach 2 of the 3 semesters a year.
Correct,
This would basically be extending it to all 3 semesters, 1
Correct.
class per
Correct.
semester.
correct.
Is that detailed in the contract that it's 1 per semester?
No, it's just 2 classes, 2
But it
classes
doesn't-
per
it doesn't
year.
say 1 per semester,
No,
something like
2
that.
classes per year.
Yes, the question was, should it?
Well, I just like to find a hobby that pays that well. Can you find me one of those hobbies? Wowee. That'd be
I
great.
guess if you can find therapy and grading papers, then that works for you.
I will just say with the amount of time with grading papers and preparing for the classes and teaching the classes, I think it's probably about 14 cents an hour, but that's just a thought. I'm thinking kind of, but not really.
Okay, thank you. Final question?
No,
comments?
I would just say, so far I have not noticed that there's been an impact with the class that he's been teaching each, in fact, each semester. The only time I've actually even noticed that it's been going on was actually during the pandemic or shortly thereafter, where I was here for youth council meetings on Thursday afternoons at 5:30. And usually when I finish, I go check my box and he would be on teaching on Zoom. It's like, oh, that's right, he has a class tonight. But I personally have not come across a time where it's impacted my being able to contact him or have something that the city's been able that's needed.
I think this is great. I'm a little biased on education, as those that know a little bit about my background. But it's energizing to be able to have something outside of your profession, to be able to help drive you and energize you, to give you some greater insights, and then also just to give you that energy that's needed to escape from one thing to another and go back and forth. That's really critical in life, and I'm behind you 100% on this. And like I said before, when it comes to education, I'm a little biased.
Thank you, council. So we'll be voting on this resolution as well tonight. And then the last item for tonight is the consent calendar. So we are going to move to item 6.1 on our special business meeting agenda, which is going to be a discussion from our Administrative Services and Finance Director, Scott Jurgis, who will go into more detail about the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Robbie just wants me to audible a raise for him, so just putting that out there. You can pay me later. All right. I'll get to the right thing here. There we go. Okay. So the tentative budget stands as it was when we presented at our last council meeting. However, there's a couple things that were discussed at the last council meeting that we wanted to incorporate into the budget. So these haven't been incorporated into the tentative budget, but will be incorporated into the budget that we ultimately adopt. So I put out a, if you will, a new tentative budget that outlined these updated items. And you can see them up on the screen there. And on the, I assume it's on the screen up here in front. So I'm just going to kind of go over those. I had told the mayor that I was going to look at interest, and as I got busy in things, I didn't look at the interest. And so as you well know, interest rates are up quite a bit from what they have been for quite some time. For some time, we've been in the 1% to 2% range in terms of our interest, and interest really wasn't a huge factor in terms of revenue. However, with interest rates being up, you know, in the 4% to 5% range, now all of a sudden interest is a factor in our revenues. We'll have to watch it in case interest rates start to drop back down so that we don't anticipate high interest rates when the opposite could be the case. However, right now we're looking at probably that this is kind of my best conservative guess, about a 370,000 total increase. So in our general fund, I would project a $250,000 increase. That would be increasing our revenue from $50,000 to $300,000. And that's a bit of a conservative guesstimation at this point in time. We'll probably land this year about around 400,000 would be my guess in the general fund as we move forward. In our CDRA fund, getting backwards there in some of my letters, we are projecting a $25,000 increase from current. Currently, we have $10,000 budgeted in there. And I would recommend that we move that up to about $35,000. We'll probably collect a little better than $40,000 in that fund for the current year.
So that I'm clear, you're talking about, these are things that are going into the upcoming budget, 23, 24.
Yes,
Okay.
they're also factored in the projections that I have for the current year's budget as well.
Okay,
So I'm not recommending that we change our current year's budget. We'll just ride that out. But these are going into our 23-24 budget.
Interest is accruing in each different bucket.
Yes.
In each different.
Yes. Our stormwater fund, I'm recommending $20,000 of interest. Currently, we had zero interest in there. It was a relatively new fund. It's only in its second full year of since its inception. But we now have some fund balance in there from some projects that have built up. And so now I'm recommending that we have about $20,000 in there that we can budget for interest in our stormwater fund. Our capital projects fund, I'm recommending a $75,000 interest. Currently, we have about $25,000 budgeted for our interest in there. However, we have quite a bit of a backlog of projects, so it has a decent fund balance in there. And so I'm going to recommend that we move that up to $100,000. So that's a $75,000 interest. So the 250, the 25, the 20, and the 75 adds up to $370,000 total interest increase in that budget. Like I said, we'll continue to monitor what interest rates are going to do going out in the future. But I think this is a good conservative estimate of what we'll receive. We could still receive a little bit more than that, but I don't think it's going to be a huge amount more than that in each of our funds. The other items that were talked about in our last meeting was by our community and economic development team. Mountain View Pollinator Park, Mountain View Park, the pollinator planting area, expanding that from the current. And I think it was presented at 25,000, but when we talked about it afterwards, since it does have to go out to bid, they'd like to get $30,000 to be able to cover that, trying to keep the bid closer to $25,000 as we move through that process. And then the other item would be the community tree planting and sale event, where we would purchase some trees, plant some of those trees on behalf of the city, and then offer the remaining amount of those trees up for sale at a reduced price to the residents of our city and or businesses of our city. And that would be, we're guessing, about $11,000 in both expense and revenue. So that would offset itself in terms of the expense and the revenue. Those are all the new items that we're recommending at this time. The other items that are contained in below, and they've been highlighted and we've highlighted them each time,
are things that we need to finalize. And I'll just quickly go through those. The property tax and the property tax rate will need to be finalized, and we will get that probably around June 10th or 12th. The COLA needs to be finalized. Currently, we have included 5.5%, and there's been some communication by the mayor and council members to reduce that to 3.5%. That would be right around a $200,000 savings if we did that, because each 1% shift is about $100,000. And so we just need some direction on that. The city attorney final increase is tied to the COLA. So when we finalize the COLA amount, then we'll know what that the city attorney increase will be. The liability insurance increase, we usually get near the end of this month. It might be early in next month. And then we will know what kind of an increase, but we have put a placeholder in there of 34,000 for that one. Maybe it's 35,000. Can't remember off the top of my head right now. And then the Spillman police records, we have a discussion on this, I think on Thursday this week, to go over exactly what we think we're going to be doing and where we think we'll be on that as we move those records from currently on the Spillman server at VEC over here to records that we can control. And then final is the UFA final contract pricing. And I got busy after lunch and didn't look this up, but I think it's about $220,000 where it ended up being, and we have $270,000 in the budget for that. So those are all areas that I anticipate we will be a little bit better than what we've projected in the budget, but we'll get those all finalized and in there so that at the next council meeting, we anticipate having all these bottom, 5 items finalized. The only one that we'll be waiting on after that will be our final property tax rate and revenue. So any other questions or items? Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Mayor, may I,
Don't go very far.
may I just comment?
Yes.
And I know we need to talk a little bit more about the cost of living. There's been some conversations about this. If the council's interested, I have, we've been doing some research on where the other cities are proposing cost of living, especially in their merit. And one of the things I've conveyed about every meeting is I worry a little bit about us being behind other cities in comparison. Most of the other cities are going 4% or higher. That being said, I recognize as staff, we appreciate the compensation and what the council has done for us, but that's one area that I'd like some conversation and direction on, just related to the cost of living and the compensation. We don't need to necessarily do it now, but eventually we'll need to do it before the 20th and a vote.
Great, thank you.
I believe you sent out a list of cities, or at least what you currently found in the county. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think I
Yes.
remember one in
I have some updates on that as well that I can send out, and I'll send out an email to each of you.
Well, the other thing I want to study is this report that I know came into my inbox. It was something that we had voted on late last year to get a better idea of personnel around the county. And I understand it'll also include information about what various positions are being paid around the county. And so I guess a question I would have is that since it was Councilman Peterson and myself who were the Compensation and Benefits Committee members, will Matthew Holton then serve with me in that capacity? We seem to have brought this as a council versus the committee. It just as the other colleagues that are seated here serve on the budget committee, which I am not included on. I would like to understand, are we going to continue with committee meetings, or is this, how do you see that proceeding?
Typically, once we get to the tentative budget, we don't have committee meetings because everything is brought forward to the full council. I'm happy to have a meeting if you want to go into that in more detail. I don't know, it's completely been finalized on who's going to be serving on the committees. But typically after the tentative budget, we're moving forward as a full council on the whole thing. But if you want to meet, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 6.2, the budget adjustment discussion. We'll have Scott address us on this issue as well.
Okay, so the budget adjustment is adjustments to the current year budget that we're in that ends this June 30th, 2023 coming up. And I'll go through them. They're organized by fund. So I'll start with the general fund and we'll move to the other funds. So the general fund, we had transferred, I think it was back in October. We had transferred some money into our capital projects fund, and this was money that was going to be utilized for our earnest money towards the hillside purchase. We knew that that would probably end up in the CDRA fund, but we needed a place to be able to expend that earnest money from as we were early in the negotiations for that. We didn't know exactly how much we would need. We put 200,000 there. Now that money can come back into the general fund because we have financed that project through the CDRA fund, through a bond and through a grant. And so we're pulling that money back out of our capital projects fund and into the general fund. So it comes in as a negative expense because that was a transfer out and expense out, if you will, of our general fund. So that's coming back in that way. The ZAP grant funding, we had received a ZAP grant for $15,000 and we've received all of those funds. So this is to put both the expense and the revenue for the ZAP grant into the general fund so that that money can be utilized. Item number 3 is the sale of cell phones. These are police old cell phones, and when they sold cell phones through a variety of ways, they were able to get $4,800 for those, and are asking that that be put back into their telecom line item so that they can expend those funds accordingly with that. The item number 4 is some overtime. Occasionally construction companies, in this case the B. Jackson Construction Company, will ask us for overtime to maybe watch over a job site or something like that. If they need something to be watched over or some traffic direction around it or different things. There are a variety of things, but this is one of those areas where they asked us for some overtime, and this would be new overtime and then the revenue to pay for that. Item number 5 is the state of Utah asset forfeiture grant. So the state of Utah does not allow asset forfeiture to come directly to the policing entity that gets it. The funds, once it goes through the adjudication process, are given to the state of Utah. The state of Utah then disperses those out in the form of a grant. And so this is our share of that grant for the current year, $3,000. And so there's $3,000 of expense and revenue in to cover that. And then in the police also, there's a bulletproof vest grant. We've received $838. There's another amount that probably won't get here this year, probably be next year that we'll recognize it. But $838 were received from the federal bulletproof vest grant. Again, we are increasing both the revenue and the expense for that. Item number, the first 7, I just noticed I have a typo and have 2 7s, but anyhow, the first 7 is the police DUI enforcement grant from the state of Utah Division of Public Safety. We received 2 amounts, $564 and $1,127 for a total of $1,691 for overtime reimbursement associated with that grant. And
Those are DUI patrol.
yes, right? Yes.
Yes, as you know, we do a DUI blitz various times of the year. We pay the funds out and then invoice the state who pays us back, and it goes to Scott, and then we just redeposit it in our overtime fund. So.
And then item number 7, we're finally getting close to finishing selling the Public Works light duty pickup trucks. We've sold 4 of those to date. We still have 1 more to sell. The 4 we've sold to date, we've received $83,000. So we're already ahead of where we thought we would be in terms of the overall sales of that. And the one we have left to sell is, I think, a 2020 or 2021. So we'll probably get a reasonable amount of money for that. We're just not sure the timing of when that will come in, but we wanted to report back to you that that's where we are to date on that. So in the general fund overall, it's a total reduction of $173,000, almost 174,000 in expenses, an increase of $109,000 in expenses or in revenues. So a total net reduction in funds needed in our general fund of $283,000. So that's definitely going in the right direction. Moving on to page 2, the capital projects fund. So related to the roundabout, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, there was some overages when we were getting into that project. 72,420 was remaining that we were not able to cover by other sources of revenue in order to cover the expenses on that we're requesting to utilize, and we can utilize this out of the existing fund balance in the capital projects fund. So we don't need to transfer additional monies to the capital projects fund for that. Item number 2 is also related to that, and this is from the Canyon School District, and it's to cover some repair and other items that the school requested associated with the roundabout. So between those two amounts, it will allow us to close that project out and finish it up in the current fiscal year. And then item,
Scott, could I?
Yeah.
I know that the vast majority of the funding for the roundabout came through a couple of different grants. This, I guess, is probably part of what the city actually had to come up with.
it is.
Maybe if you could, make a note when you're, bored or something. I would really like to kind of just get a short report on what the roundabout cost, if that's okay with your boss.
It's okay. The only thing is, I don't always know about these funds because they don't get expended through
No,
me.
then maybe,
But
maybe,
Matt can tell us
maybe
all
it's,
about
maybe it's a Matt question.
that.
Give me the look. It is certainly not urgent,
But
but
it
I
is
would be interested
significant.
to find
Yeah,
out.
it is significant because our net out-of-pocket expenses associated with this was, like a couple $100,000, and the net cost of that roundabout was significant. So I don't know, approximately, Matt. I don't know.
The roundabout was a little over 2.8, somewhere in that neighborhood, and so we had a portion. We pay. We'll get the report for you, but we have a breakdown. Looks good. Most of this is change orders that we're talking about that you don't know about till you get going.
Item number 3 here is what we talked about earlier, is the transfer back of the money from the general fund, and then also the reduction of the expenditure that was initially in here, kind of more as a placeholder. And so there's a reduction total of $112,000 in expenses and a reduction of $185,000 in revenue for the 72,420 of net increase in expenses. And that's again associated to the roundabout that we're gonna use unobligated fund balance in that fund to take care of that. In the CDRA fund, now that we have the Hillside Plaza, we need to recognize both some expense and some revenue to recognize some of the rents that come in, and then also to recognize some of the expenditures we will have going out. Some example of expenditures would be utilities, insurance, property maintenance, etc. And then mainly the revenues come from rents. There's maybe a couple other minor sources of revenue, but that's kind of the main area. And it will be a little less than 150,000, but that's pretty close to a third of a year, which is what we're going to be recognizing for the remainder of this current year. And that's all the items that I'm showing right now for budget adjustments for the year. Any
Other questions, comments? Great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. We'll vote on that a bit later tonight. The last item for staff reports.
Amendment, not on or do I have an old agenda? We have a public hearing on this. Are we?
Yeah, but as far as the business meeting, the special business meeting, it's included on there as a discussion. And then we have the public hearing in the business meeting.
the public hearings on it, but we'll actually vote on it next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna.
So item 6.3 is our is an update to the council on our spring runoff preparations so far. So we'll have either Matt Ship, our Public Works Director, and I don't know if Paul is here, our Assistant Chief, Paul Brenneman, who's our Emergency Management Director as well.
Yeah, I think Paul
don't see
had
Paul.
some things tonight, so he asked to be excused. But I'll walk through this fairly quickly. I don't. Okay, just real quick, just give you an update on what's happening and where we are. Obviously, everything I tell you right now has changed. And it will change before I'm done. So anyway, just try to let you know what we're doing and what's happening. So a little runoff update. Just for the public's information, these are the canyons that we watch and we worry about and we look at: the Big Cottonwood Canyon, Ferguson, couple of things called unknown, Deaf Smith, Little Willow, and Little Cottonwood Creek. So latest water data, just so you're aware, as Paul normally would cover this, just the latest water data. Today, as you can, it may not be able to see it, but the best you can, we have about, they're stating about 63.5 inches of water, snow water, in that level that's up there. I'll show you some comparisons here in a little bit. Now, this data, just for, once again, the public's information, can all be found at rain-flow.slco.gov. .org. It's a great website for information. Just to give you a comparison, sometimes, you know, we don't know. We'll be honest, we have no clue. I don't have a crystal ball of what's going to happen. But if we take comparisons to what we are now and what is comparable, and we say 2011 was very comparable to what we're sitting at now. In 2011, at this time, we actually had 72 inches of water still up there. We're about 10 inches. I mean, we're about 8-9 inches below that from where we were in 2011. Now, 2011 is not a magical year. There was no flooding. There was nothing that occurred. It's like I said, it's just somewhat of a comparable to give you an idea. And if you look at the temperatures, they also have a good comparison. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we follow a 2011 pattern here.
I think we did have a restaurant's balcony get washed out.
The restaurant's about
May I mention in 2010,
10 was.
we had some pretty significant flooding, and then the county did a lot of work from 2010 to 2011 in the creeks to shore some of the banks and things up. So that's why we kind of look at this benchmark 2010 problems, but 2011 actually had more water from what Paul has mentioned, but the improvements kind of prevented some of those flood issues. And so that's why we're kind of looking at these years.
Yeah, so
Good news.
just different comparisons. Also, if you'll recall, I just told you we had, I don't know if I can go back. Yeah, 63.5 inches of water right now compared to in 2011 we were there, but also in 2011 as a comparison, there, by the time we were able to match, it was in mid-June. So the water hung out up there in 2011 for a very long time. And you can kind of see how it just immediately started a runoff. You can, it was still at 75 inches the 1st of June. We're much less than that. Just means absolutely really nothing unless you like to do comparisons, but it's interesting. Like Tim said, county did a lot of work on these creeks. A lot of things have happened, and I'm going to share a little bit about what's going on. So some comparisons for you just for information. Now, this was as of 2:45 this afternoon. Little Cottonwood Creek's discharging at about 340 CFS, and Big Cottonwood at about 310. These are the charts right here. This number, these red lines up here are what they estimate, what they call flood stage. Does not mean it's going to flood, but that's where they estimate the flows need to get to before we really have some things as far as flooding, the rising of the creek. In other words, there's a lot of room inside the creek to bring some water up. You can see where it is. This is Little Cottonwood. This is Big Cottonwood. And you can see the diurnal changes as it heats. And we've talked about that. Heats up, comes down the mountain, heats up, comes down the mountain. So, and like I said, that was as of about 2:45 this afternoon. And I just checked it and it's actually lower right now. We expect later on tonight it'll go back up. Another interesting chart we look at is based on NOAA and their temperature forecast. The Colorado Basin River forecast kind of throws out a 10-day look based on how temperatures are changing, and you can kind of see how this thing moves. I hesitate somewhat to show it, but it's there on the website, so I wanted to bring it forward. So if people go and look at it, this does not mean, this right here does not mean we are flooding. It just means the water's starting to rise. This all is dependent on temperature, and things of that nature, how we react to the environment. This is Big Cottonwood Creek, as you can see, and this moves every day. They change the forecast, and it's kind of, this was today as I was looking at it. And this is Little Cottonwood. I'm not sure what action stage means, but they have a line here where they call it action stage. So they're looking right now at some peaks happening around the 24th, somewhere in there of May. Once again, it could very well change. There's nothing magical about that, but we do monitor this and track this, and gives us some good indications of what to prepare for. Public's information, yours as well. These are things we're doing every day, twice a day. Staff goes out to at least 49 crossings in the city. That's creeks as well as irrigation ditches. We're responsible for all road crossings, so we go out and we monitor those. We check them for flow, we check them for debris, clog. We just take a look at them, and we track all of that on a daily basis, twice a day. A staff member is assigned to each crossing, a group of crossings, so they know what it looks like every day. They go out and it's getting checked. Weekends as well. Also want to point out in the evenings, our police are out every night as they are doing their patrols. They check these hot spots as well, and making sure everything's flowing. And so far, so good. Everything's working out well. We haven't had any issues. So what is happening? We continue to monitor the creeks. Once again, the police are patrolling it at nights. Sandbag filling, as far as at Public Works, the volunteer at the yard, that's done. But we are still, when groups are calling in, church groups, neighborhood groups call in and want to do it, we're still delivering bags and sand to those groups so they can fill. This last week, we had 2 of them. We have throughout the city staged approximately 23,000 bags at churches around the area. St. Thomas More, a couple of LDS churches, Top of the World, down on Creek Road. And then we also have about 10,000 bags that are sitting at the yard. Those are there for fast deployment. If something happens, we're able to pick them up and get them there as fast as we can. We monitor the creeks daily. I've told you, with data from the county website, which I've shared with you. If residents go in and they live along the creek and they clean up any debris and they call it in, put it out in front of their house, we're picking it up. We've been doing that now for the past month, and it's been a good program. There's been a lot of things, and the worst part about it is getting it to the dump. Not cleaning out of your yard, it's just getting it to the dump. So they're bringing it out to the street, we're picking it up and we're hauling it off. So there's a little program there. We meet every week with city staff to discuss emergency planning, go over all the plans, changes, and what we have. We also have a weekly meeting with Salt Lake County Flood Control that Paul and I attend, and we're there for that. So if the need arises, staff is ready to respond. We just are in a wait and see mode in a way to see where this, if anything happens, if the temperatures keep doing what they're doing, the county and our reports from the county is, this is great. Everything's working out really well. We like to see these flows at around 300 plus. The water is just starting to move and it's controllable right now. So I believe that is it. Are there any questions about what we're doing?
So first off, thank you, Matt. I think, please let your staff know how much we appreciate what they're doing. And I was in a meeting this morning with the county flood control manager, Clint Meekum, and we're optimistic about how things are coming down so far. So the 10-day forecast is actually really positive. We're going to see temperatures in the high 70s, low 80s, back into the 50s at night. And their words were, that's almost ideal for right now. We'll continue to get more and more of the water down, which minimizes the chance of a really high increase that stays up and brings it all down at once. So we're cautiously optimistic, and I appreciate your department for all that they're doing. So any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'd also like to comment appreciation from the residents of District 4. It's so probably emotionally helpful for the residents to see the incredible amount of work and great organization that has come through Public Works, through the Emergency Preparedness Committee, all the volunteers. I mean, what we see these stacks of sandbags at the ready, your crew checking on the creeks that flow through District 4, and it's very appreciated. I also want to thank your staff for responding so quickly when one of the residents in District 4 pointed out that one of our stop signs where Daneborg comes into Creek Road was being shrouded by a tree. I think the comment only came in maybe 24 hours ago. And when I rode my e-bike over here, the tree had already been, the branches had been removed and the stop sign was now clearly evident. And, you know, so that kind of responsiveness is incredible. And so thank you to you and Public Works for being right on that.
We appreciate it. And for the public's and your information, stop signs are first and foremost priority on signs. If they're down and they can't be seen, they cause real problems. So we have to do stop signs pretty quick, but thank you. They did respond actually faster than I thought they would as well.
Yeah, it was terrific.
I was
Thank
going to
you.
talk to them tomorrow morning and see if they got it done. So you just reported it.
I mean, I could hardly believe it as I rode down the hill toward the stop sign that I had seen a picture of the day before. And I'm like, that stop sign is not obstructed. Then when I got underneath it, all the branches had been cut away to, you know, expose the stop sign. So thanks for.
And I'm
being
not,
so-
honestly, I'm going to find out. I think they knocked on the resident's door. The resident might have gone ahead and done it, but they notified them and we'll just see how it went. But thank you for letting us know that it's been done. I'll mark it off my checklist.
Thanks, Matt. Just take the credit. You're good. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so that's the last item for our special business meeting agenda for tonight. So at this point, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, may I just mention one thing? I'm sorry.
Yes.
We didn't have the normal work session, we didn't have the list of the calendar events, but I wanted to just bring up that this is National Police Week. And also we had, I think it was yesterday or the day before, National Peace Officers Memorial Day. So I just want to recognize our police and all the great work that they do, especially here in Cottonwood Heights, as this is an important week. We're going to have a meal for them sometime later this week around Friday or so. I've talked to Chief Russo about that, but wanted to recognize that.
Thank you. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn our work session and reconvene the business session at 7.
I'll second.
Motion to approve and a motion on a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.